Adam Silver, speaking about him and things that he doesn't want, something that he does want, and he talked about yesterday at his presser, is expansion. He talked about expanding to Europe, though, not yet for the Sonics, not yet for Vegas. He talked about how they've announced exploring a new men's basketball league in Europe. The FIBA Secretary General was there with him as well, and they talked about how they might be starting a league in Europe. No guarantees, though. They just wanted to announce that they're exploring this, Tom. What were your initial takeaways of the NBA and FIBA potential partnership here?
Have you ever seen a press conference where the NBA is announcing an exploration of a deal? Very strange, you know? It's like they had a press release ready or announcement ready that they had come to agreement on terms, and then they couldn't come to agreement on terms. I mean, I'm speculating here. I have no inside information, but it just felt odd that they would release a press conference or a press release about that they're talking. I don't know what that's about. Maybe they're trying to drum up interest in terms of the franchise fees or trying to get investors involved, and they want to increase the bidding. But that was bizarre to see that as a press release. I can understand that in a press conference, you say, "Hey, we're looking at this," but to get like an NBA watermark on exploration of a deal, it was bizarre. And I will say, it's exciting. I would think we all can agree that it would be fun for us to go on some road trips to Europe, to Barcelona, to Madrid, to Athens, to London on Yahoo Sports' dime to go cover the NBA. That'd be amazing. I would love to have just like a mid-season. Hey, KOC, you want to just go on the beaches of Barcelona for a little bit in the middle of the season? That would be awesome. I think we're all cheering for that.
Have the NBA Cup out there?
That would be awesome. You know, I think that's the kind of
that's what they want to
like
do. Oh yeah.
Right, is like we in the formative years of the NBA Cup, everyone's kind of figuring out what is the idea, what's the plan, why are we doing this in Vegas, why are the stats not counting, what is the trophy, what are the stakes, why is Giannis Antetokounmpo not celebrating an NBA Cup? We have a bunch of champagne on ice in the locker room. The players aren't even invested in winning this thing, but once the European piece comes together, that's what I think everyone's excited for, is a mid-season Europe trip. And that's why I think they're breaking up the schedule to try to figure out a way, how can we make this so it's not too taxing on the bodies to make an in-season tournament over in Europe. And I think in like next 5 years, I think that's a real possibility. They're exploring the idea of an NBA Cup in Europe. I'm waiting for that press release.
Well, I mean, that is the plan. Like, they want to expand the NBA Cup. They're starting out small, and they want to take baby steps to going to a worldwide global tournament. And I think that's what a piece of this is. The NBA wants their hands in Europe. They want a bigger piece of the pie there. They see the potential. Adam Silver talked about building some new state-of-the-art arenas out there. So, like, they see the potential for NBA being truly a global game. And they talked, though, about expansion here in America, though, as well. He didn't really give a timeline on Seattle or Vegas, but one thing he did say, you know, he kind of was speaking to Sonics fans. He's like, we appreciate how there's still all this interest. We have not forgotten about this. There's just certain things he said that he can't say publicly, but they're studying how to best go about this because they don't want those franchises to be in horrible shape when they start out. So I'm intrigued here, like, because I remember Bill Simmons a few years ago, maybe a couple years ago, I think he said it was like 26, 27 season expansion was when it was going to happen. I remember hearing that as well a few years back, but that's not happening. We don't have a timeline yet. So clearly the NBA is waiting for the right time to pull the trigger. Have you heard anything, timing wise, Tom, about that?
Every time I think that it's right around the corner, they add another thing in sequence to say, hey, the Boston, once the media deal happens, okay, the media deal happens. Once the Boston sale happens, okay, the Boston sale happens. Hey, wait until we figure out this whole expansion thing in Europe. Then we will get to the domestic expansion. And I will add to this, by the way, American Airlines is not the sponsor for the NBA Cup. It's Emirates. Okay. If you need to know anything about it, keep your third eye open about that. You know, when they're making a presenting sponsor for the NBA Cup, it could have been a domestic or an American airline, but it was not. It was something overseas. So if that gives you a clue about what their aspirations are, and I do think that Seattle fans have had enough. Like, please stop teasing us with this expansion. They keep talking about it. We keep hearing about it, that it's around the corner. You got LeBron campaigning for the Vegas team, and we're just sitting there waiting for the Seattle SuperSonics to get that team. And it seems like they keep kicking the can down the road. Poor Sonics fans.
Is that what they're waiting for? You just said it right there. LeBron retirement? Is that the holdup?
It could be. I think it's really difficult. We saw the Tom Brady stuff with the Raiders, where it's like, how involved can a player be? A former player who's doing a broadcast and also partially owning a team. There's a lot of conflict of interest there. And LeBron James has been openly campaigning for that Las Vegas expansion team. And to me, I don't know who the group is that he's going to go in on. I don't think he has enough cash to go buy himself an NBA team. That would be crazy if LeBron James somehow drummed up the money. But I do think that LeBron wants it, and we'll see if he eventually gets it. But that could be the holdup here is like, LeBron, yo, how many years do you want to do this? And poor Sonics fans have been through enough, man. They can't sit here after watching the Thunder get taken from them, and then the Thunder go to the 2012 NBA Finals, lose to LeBron, and then wait until LeBron gets his team before the Seattle SuperSonics get their team back.
Well, I mean, he's with Fenway Sports Group. John Henry, owner of the Red Sox, we'll see if he would go in with them and continue to go in with them. But, Henry and Fenway Sports Group passed on the opportunity to make a bid for the Celtics. The thought is that because they're waiting for Vegas. So we'll see if that ends up happening. Expansion, not a lot of new stuff there. I thought it was interesting. Adam Silver admitted that the All-Star game was a miss, which, yeah, no kidding. This is probably the biggest miss of the entire season so far. He did not talk about, and he was not asked about potential revisions for that moving forward, though. But, nice to, he seemed pretty much fed up, but you kind of hear him kind of grumble when it was mentioned.
Yeah, it's very clear that Adam Silver needs to get his David Stern on. Like, enough with giving the players the power to decide. They come in and they have Larry Bird talk to the team last year, and Joe Dumars talked to the team, and he's like, yeah, they're going to try harder this year. And they didn't. And this year they're like, hey, Steph Curry, you come up with the idea. And then it flopped again. It's time for Adam Silver to just put his foot down and be like, here's what we're going to do. And if you don't do this, we're going to have some serious consequences for you. I feel like I'm a parent right now talking about how these players need to, at some point, face the music from the commissioner's office in the same way that David Stern would drop the hammer on these guys and say, look, this is a product that if we don't show that we care, and that in this new media deal that we're not going to make our partners happy, the next deal is going to be a lot worse. You're not going to get that second contract that you've been banking on. You're not going to continue to be getting this money, because at this point, Netflix, Amazon, all of the YouTube, they're coming for the NBA and video games, all of it. The attention needs to be on these live games and these tentpole events. And right now, one of the biggest tentpoles, the All-Star game, it's a joke. They're making a mockery of it. And Adam Silver has to get the players in line. And it can't be just, hey, what do you guys think?
I think you're spot on. And you mentioned, Netflix and Amazon, and Adam had mentioned how, 5 years ago, nobody would have anticipated that Amazon would be carrying live sports games. And yet here we are. And he was saying that in context when it comes to local game rights, with that deal coming up as well. And one thing I've heard over the years is the NBA has always envisioned a world in which that they'd have more control over the local games. And now by that, I mean, like, the NFL has CBS, they have Fox, they have NBC, they have ESPN for the marquee games. But for CBS and Fox being the bulk of the games at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Sundays, it's all the same, different broadcasters for each game, but it's all the same graphics, same type of quality, same camera quality, all that stuff. I think that's what the NBA is hoping for here with that next local rights deal, that they want, some are still in 720p when you watch games. I think the NBA wants to up the quality there. It would not shock me if it ends up being a Netflix or an Amazon that's carrying a bulk of local games where you get 4K, and that they improve the quality of these games. And that's part of the NBA's vision for local.
I don't know if you caught this, but Major League Baseball on opening day on Thursday, they basically had the entire MLB TV crash. Like, they could not get the games going. And it made me feel good as an NBA broadcaster and an NBA analyst, is that the NBA isn't the only one having these tech problems. Like League Pass, it feels like League Pass should be way better than it is, and it does feel like the
League
app
Pass has
should be
it's gotten much better, Tom. I like League Pass.
Yes,
They've improved it a lot.
I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been better. It's been better, but it made me feel like, oh, okay, we're not the only ones who have been suffering through a lot of glitches and crashes, but it has been better this year, to your point. And I do think that, the MLS model of going to Apple and having their games broadcast through Apple, that seems like a template for the NBA. Maybe not with Apple, but somewhere, with Netflix or another party where it's going to be, they're going to have it to a streaming service and you could subscribe and have it that way. I do think that, just speaking me for the Portland Trailblazers, like I love doing the Blazers broadcast, and it would be so good to maintain some of those ties with the local fans and the local broadcasting groups, because I do think like there's some flavor and some uniqueness to each broadcast that it would be a shame if we kind of like sanitized all the local broadcasts to be feeling the same way. Like I would want to make sure we kept that same texture and flavor of the local broadcast in some way. I think the NBA will get that right.
I agree. I think the NBA wants to retain that while also kind of having the standards equal for all. Because, like you said, the Blazers have one of the best broadcasts. It just flat out is, from a production standpoint, innovation standpoint, stats, everything like that. The Blazers broadcast does. Like it's, they've always kind of been ahead of the curve there. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting in front of me. It's just the truth. Portland does a great job. I think Boston does a great job as well. Always have with their pregame show. Everything like has been really good. A lot of broadcasts are good, but not all of them are. And I think the NBA wants to kind of make sure that the quality is up to par with everything else. Adam had also talked about a little bit about tanking. One of the lines that stood out to me, and you've written a lot about this, Tom, so I'm curious about your thoughts when you heard Adam Silver say, "We have made progress." That is his exact words. "We have made progress." Talking about flattening the lottery odds, 14% up top rather than 25%, which did effectively remove those horrible Sixers teams where you were just outright tanking with a process, but it's just moved the tanking towards the middle rather than at the top of the lottery. So there's still tanking. You've written a lot about this in recent weeks, Tom. So when you heard Adam Silver say, "We have made progress," what was on your mind?
I think a lot of the conversation is missing this third piece, and I wrote about it, the death threats and all of the gambling impact of the tanking, like the in-game tanking, the quiet quitting. We've talked about it on this pod. I think this is something new. I think this is something problematic because we just had the Jonte Porter scandal a year ago, and now you have teams like the Toronto Raptors that had Jonte Porter on their team and are sitting guys on purpose in crunch time and affecting a lot of these over-under bets. And people are very angry about this. And this is a new thing. This might not have been a problem 10 years ago when the NBA is not in bed with sports betting companies, but now it is. And so when you have guys, star players who are being sat on purpose in winning situations, this messes up the integrity of the game. And it also raises a lot of concerns about, hey, was that guy really hurt? Was that team really tanking? Or is this another Jonte Porter situation? Fair or unfair, we just had a scandal in the NBA. And I feel like this should be a way bigger deal, is this in-game tanking. And yeah, Adam Silver has a lot of business partnerships to take care of. And I do think that we are dancing very much on thin ice here when we're talking about all the scandals and the investigations that are happening at a federal level in college basketball. And I do feel like we need to nip this in the bud. We need to figure out this in-game tanking very soon, because I don't know what the fix is. And I've talked to people around the league. They feel this, that fans are getting way more violent and way more inflammatory, and the death threats are a lot more frequent recently in their DMs, in games, and it's reaching a boiling point where it's not just about full game tanking, it's the in-game tanking, and these people who are making bets on the games and are looking at Lauri Markkanen and Scotty Barnes and other players getting sat. Maybe the answer is, Kevin, maybe you shouldn't be betting on the Jazz and the Toronto Raptors at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people have lost their minds in a lot of different ways in culture. So I hope 99.999% of those death threats and whatnot are empty. But all it takes is one. And that's the scary thing and why they need to be taken seriously. But ultimately for the NBA, like what's in their control? Obviously, controlling this as best as they can with rules that dictate what teams are allowed to do. They do their best. They have the 65 game minimum for awards to try to force players to play at least 65 games. They flatten the lottery odds. They fine teams for sitting players if they shouldn't be sitting. But you're right, Tom. The in-game tanking aspect, when you have certain guys that aren't finishing games, aren't playing fourth quarters, how do you police that? Yeah. You remove the incentive, right? Like, don't you have to remove the incentive to lose? But ultimately, like the tough thing there is, so the NBA competition committee is meeting today. They're probably meeting as we record this podcast right now. Maybe by the time you listen or watch this show, we will get some leaks about what was discussed regarding tanking, or maybe there was nothing discussed regarding tanking. We'll find all that out. But I do wonder, with everything that's happened this year, the amount of teams that feel like are tanking towards that middle area of the lottery, will we come back to some overhaul proposals for the draft lottery? That's what I'm wondering about. With what we could the lottery wheel come back? Mike Zarin's idea from like a decade ago, could that come back, where you remove team record from being what determines the draft order, and instead it's something like every team gets a top 5 pick every 3-4 years? Could it be something like that? Or will we, make winning count towards lottery standings, which I am not in favor of, because then there's just incentive to tank earlier in the season rather than late in the season, so you can start that clock earlier. I don't have a clear solution here, Tom, but I would expect we're going to get some leaks over the weekend about what is discussed in that competition committee.